The first body fell from the sky at 3:17 in the morning, and it was not dead. It struck the glass roof of Ether Terminal with a sound like a cathedral bell splitting underwater. Thousands of exhausted commuters froze beneath the storm-lit dome, coffee steaming in their hands, children asleep on shoulders, workers staring upward through drifting vapor and neon reflections. Lightning spread across the clouds above Vadran like cracks in a giant eye. Then the body moved. Lyra Vale stood on Platform 9 with a repair harness around her waist and grease streaked across her knuckles. She had been recalibrating a broken signal array when the impact rattled the entire terminal. Now everyone stared upward together. The man on the fractured glass roof slowly lifted his head. Silver hair. Dark suit. No blood. Rain slid across his face as he pressed one trembling hand against the cracking dome. His lips moved silently. Nobody heard him, but Lyra understood somehow. Not yet. The station alarms exploded awake. "Clear the platform," security officers shouted. Panic spread instantly. Bags dropped. Trains screeched against emergency brakes. People shoved toward exits while others stood frozen beneath the spreading cracks overhead. The stranger looked directly at Lyra, not at the crowd. Her. Then the dome shattered. Glass rained downward in glittering sheets. The man fell with it. Lyra moved before fear could stop her. She lunged forward, yanked an emergency cargo tarp from its ceiling hooks, and threw herself beneath the falling figure. The impact drove both of them into the floor. Pain burst through her shoulder. The tarp tore loose and slid across the platform while glass shattered around them like crystal gunfire. For several seconds Lyra couldn't breathe. Then the stranger grabbed her wrist. His hand was freezing cold. "They found the lower city," he whispered. The words hollowed her chest. Nobody talked about the lower city. Not openly. Not unless they wanted trouble. Vadran rose in endless towers above poisoned floodwaters and buried ruins from the old century wars. The upper districts glittered with gardens, drones, and floating advertisements. But beneath the streets, beneath concrete, sealed tunnels, and forgotten infrastructure, stories claimed another city still existed. A hidden one. A place erased from maps. Lyra's father used to speak about it late at night when windows were closed and lights stayed off. Then the pale authority took him. 12 years ago. Security officers stormed toward them now, weapons drawn. "Step away from him." The stranger forced something into Lyra's palm. A small black key. Smooth. Warm. Teardrop-shaped. "Black Gate 12, he whispered. "Before sunrise." "Who are you?" Lyra asked. His gray eyes softened with something almost like regret. "Your father was right." The officers reached them. The stranger released her hand. Then every light in Ether Terminal died. Darkness swallowed the station. Screams erupted instantly. Emergency sirens failed mid-pulse. Elevators stopped. Trains groaned in the tunnels below while rain poured through the shattered dome overhead. Blue weapon lights flashed somewhere nearby. "Seal all exits." Lyra shoved the key into her boot and ran. She knew the terminal better than the officers chasing her. She had spent 6 years repairing its hidden systems, crawling through maintenance shafts and ventilation tunnels nobody else remembered existed. She slipped through a staff-only access door and sprinted down a narrow staircase into the service corridors beneath Platform 9. Metal walls vibrated around her. Her shoulder throbbed violently. Behind her came pounding boots. Sector D lockdown initiated. Lyra pushed harder. The deeper tunnels smelled of rust, wet concrete, and overheated wiring. Emergency lights flickered weakly overhead, painting the corridor in pulses of red. She finally stopped beside an old maintenance mirror bolted crookedly to the wall. For a moment she only saw herself. Rain-soaked black hair, sharp breathing, fear widening her eyes. Then another reflection appeared behind her. Her father. Jonas Vale stood motionless in the mirror wearing the same dark coat he disappeared in 12 years ago. Lyra spun around instantly. The corridor was empty. Her pulse hammered painfully. No! She looked back at the mirror. Only herself remained. Static crackled overhead. Then the public announcement system activated. Public safety incident in progress. Report all suspicious activity. Remain where you are. The voice cut out. Another voice replaced it. Low. Familiar. Lyra. She froze. It was her father's voice. Go to Black Gate 12. The speaker whispered through static. Trust nobody wearing white. The transmission died. Lyra stood motionless while distant sirens echoed through the underground levels. White uniforms. The Pale Authority. Vadran's smiling ghosts. They inspected homes, controlled media, erased records, and removed people quietly enough that neighbors learned not to ask questions. Lyra's father vanished after accusing them of hiding entire districts beneath the city. Everybody called him paranoid afterward. Everybody except Lyra. She reached the lower transit tunnels just before dawn began staining the storm drain silver. Black Gate 12 stood at the corridor's end. Massive. Ancient. A wall of black steel covered in flood warnings and faded hazard symbols from another era. It was supposed to be permanently sealed. Tonight, a thin line of amber light glowed between its doors. Lyra slowed carefully. Someone stood beside the gate. A boy, 17 at most. Thin, terrified, wearing a white authority coat. Lyra immediately backed away. The boy lifted both hands. Please, he said quickly. Don't run. You work for them. I stole the coat. That's not helping. I'm trying to help you. Lyra studied him carefully. Rainwater dripped from his dark curls. His breathing shook visibly. Whatever fear lived inside him looked genuine. What's your name? She asked. Noah Saren. And why are you here, Noah? He glanced nervously toward the tunnel behind her. Because they're coming. The amber light between the gate doors widened slightly. Something massive shifted behind the steel. Lyra felt it through the floor. A vibration. Slow. Breathing. The buried city was alive. Noah stepped backward from the gate. You shouldn't open it, he whispered. Lyra pulled the black key from her boot. The moment it touched the air, the gate emitted a deep mechanical hum. Noah's face went pale. Oh God! What? You really have it. Footsteps echoed suddenly through the tunnel behind them. Heavy. Organized. Authority units. Blue targeting lasers cut through the darkness. Citizen Lyra Vale, a voice called calmly. Step away from the gate. 3 white armored officers emerged from the shadows with rifles raised. Behind them came a taller figure in a flawless white coat untouched by rain or dust. Director Kalis. Lyra recognized him instantly from city broadcasts. The smiling face of the Pale Authority. He looked at her almost kindly. You've inherited something dangerous, he said softly. The black key vibrated violently in Lyra's hand. Behind the gate, something knocked 3 times. The entire tunnel shook. Director Kalis stopped smiling. Do not open that door, he said. But the gate was already beginning to unlock itself. The first thing Lyra noticed was the silence. Not ordinary silence. Not the distant mechanical hum Vadran always carried through its bones. This silence felt buried. Ancient. The massive doors of Black Gate 12 trembled as hidden locks disengaged one after another deep inside the walls. Dust spilled from the ceiling in pale streams. Director Kalis raised one gloved hand. Final warning, he said calmly. Step away from the gate. The 3 authority officers tightened their aim. Blue laser sights crawled across Lyra's chest. Behind the gate came another knock. Slower this time, like something enormous testing the other side. Noah Saren backed against the tunnel wall. You don't understand what's down there. Kalis never looked at him. I understand perfectly. The final lock released with a sound like a giant exhaling. The doors began to part. A wave of cold air rolled into the tunnel. Not stale air. Fresh air. Impossible air. Lyra stared as darkness opened beyond the gate. Not ruins. Not collapsed infrastructure. But light. Far below, thousands of tiny amber windows glowed like stars trapped underground. An entire city lived beneath Vadran. Noah whispered, "Oh God!" One of the officers panicked first. He fired. The shot screamed past Lyra's shoulder and struck the widening gate. Sparks exploded across the steel. Then the darkness beyond moved. Something shot upward from below faster than sight. The officer vanished. Not fell. Vanished. A blur of black metal dragged him screaming into the abyss beyond the gate. The remaining officers opened fire instantly. Blue energy rounds filled the tunnel. Kalis shouted, "Cease fire!" Too late. The thing returned. It unfolded from the darkness like a mechanical spider the size of a car, all sharp limbs and polished black armor. Its movements were horrifyingly smooth. A red lens glowed at its center. The machine slammed into the second officer. Bones cracked. The rifle spun away. Lyra grabbed Noah and threw both of them behind a concrete support pillar as weapons fire lit the tunnel. The machine moved through bullets like rain. The third officer tried to retreat. A blade unfolded from the machine's body and pierced straight through the man's chest. Silence followed. Only the sound of dripping water remained. Director Kalis stood perfectly still. The machine turned toward him. For the first time since Lyra met him, fear touched his face. Then the machine lowered itself slowly, like a bow. Kalis stared at it in disbelief. Lyra stepped off the platform carefully. "You knew my father?" The woman nodded once. "We all did. Where is he?" The woman hesitated too long. Lyra felt the answer before hearing it. "He's dead," the woman said softly. The underground city seemed to tilt sideways around Lyra. "No. He died 4 months ago." "No," Lyra repeated louder. The woman approached slowly. "His name here was Architect Vale. He built the shield network that kept the city hidden from the surface." Lyra's hands trembled violently. 12 years waiting. 12 years believing he might still be alive. Gone. Noah spoke quietly behind her. "I'm sorry." Lyra turned away sharply before either of them saw tears forming. Far overhead, a distant explosion rumbled through the cavern. Everyone looked upward instantly. One of the armed guards touched an earpiece. They breached the upper tunnels. The scarred woman cursed under her breath. "How?" Noah asked. The director brought null units. Fear crossed every face nearby. Lyra noticed it immediately. "What are null units?" Nobody answered. Then the lights flickered. Once, twice. The entire underground city dimmed suddenly. Somewhere deep below, sirens began wailing. The scarred woman grabbed Lyra's arm hard enough to hurt. "We need to move now." "What's happening?" The woman looked toward the darkness beneath the city. The authority found the core. A deep metallic sound echoed upward from below. Not machinery. Not exactly. It sounded alive. Another siren activated. Then another. Across the cavern, lights started disappearing section by section. Entire districts going dark. People began screaming somewhere in the distance. Noah stepped backward slowly. "That's impossible," he whispered. The scarred woman drew her weapon. "It's awake." The cavern floor far below split open, and something enormous began rising toward the city. The thing rising beneath the underground city was larger than any building Lyra had ever seen. At first she thought the darkness itself was moving. Then lights reflected across metal. Black, curved, endless. The cavern trembled as gigantic sections of armored structure emerged from the abyss below the city. Entire transit bridges shook violently. People screamed across distant platforms while evacuation sirens pulsed red through the underground skyline. Lyra stared upward and still couldn't see the top of it. "What is that?" she whispered. Nobody answered immediately. The scarred woman finally spoke. "It's called the Atlas Engine." The name meant nothing to Lyra, but fear rolled through the crowd around them like poison. Workers abandoned stations. Armed guards rushed toward defensive positions along the bridges. Above, warning lights flashed across suspended towers. "System breach detected. System breach detected." The machine continued rising. Its surface was covered in enormous circular structures that rotated slowly, each one glowing with pale white energy. Thick cables stretched from the machine into the cavern walls like veins feeding a heart. Noah looked sick. "It's not supposed to wake up." The scarred woman grabbed Lyra's arm again. "Move." They sprinted across the transit bridge while the cavern shook around them. Below, the Atlas engine emerged farther from the abyss, revealing layers of colossal mechanical architecture folding outward like a city-sized skeleton unfolding after centuries of sleep. Lyra struggled to process what she was seeing. This was under Vadran the whole time? Before Vadran, the woman replied. That stopped Lyra cold. What? The woman kept moving. Keep up. More explosions echoed from the upper tunnels. Authority forces were entering the lower city. The realization hit Lyra all at once. Her father hadn't discovered hidden ruins. He had discovered something far older than the city above. The group reached a reinforced doorway guarded by 2 armed sentries. One opened the heavy steel entrance immediately. Inside waited a command center built from salvaged machinery and glowing holographic displays. Dozens of operators worked frantically around circular consoles. A giant projection dominated the room. The Atlas engine rotated slowly within it. Lyra finally saw its full shape. It wasn't a building. It was a buried machine stretching nearly the entire width of the underground cavern. And it was turning on. Energy levels climbing. One operator shouted. Outer seals failing in District 5. Null units entering southern corridors. The scarred woman stepped toward the center console. Status. A gray-haired technician looked up. The engine's core is responding to surface interference. Can you shut it down? We've been trying for 80 years. Lyra stared at them. 80 years. Nobody even looked surprised she was there anymore. The technician finally noticed her expression. You really don't know anything, do you? No, Lyra snapped. Nobody tells me anything. The room fell silent for half a second. Then the scarred woman sighed. My name is Commander Sarah Kane, she said. And your father believed one day you'd come here. Lyra's throat tightened painfully. You said he's dead. He is. Then start explaining. Another tremor shook the chamber. Sarah activated the central hologram fully. The Atlas engine expanded above them in white light. 200 years ago, Sarah began, the old world discovered something beneath this continent. Not technology. Not exactly. A structure older than recorded civilization. The hologram shifted. Ancient excavation images appeared. Gigantic tunnels. Dead machines. Skeletons fused into black metal walls. The governments tried studying it, Sarah continued. Most of them collapsed within a decade. Why? Because the machine was asleep. And sleeping things dream. Lyra frowned. What does that even mean? The technician answered quietly. It changes people. The hologram shifted again. Now Lyra saw photographs of cities. Riots. Mass suicides. Burned streets. Faces twisted in terror. The Atlas engine emits frequencies that affect the human nervous system, Sarah explained. Hallucinations. Obsession. Violence. Entire governments destroyed themselves trying to control it. Lyra felt suddenly cold. And my father? Sarah looked at the hologram silently for a moment. Jonas Vale discovered the machine wasn't broken. A terrible metallic groan echoed through the cavern below them. The command center lights flickered. Operators shouted simultaneously. Movement detected in lower sectors. It's deploying. Lyra looked at the hologram. Something was opening on the Atlas engine's surface. Massive circular sections unfolding slowly, like eyes opening. Noah whispered, "Oh no!" Then the city lights outside went black. Total darkness swallowed the cavern beyond the command center windows. Screams erupted everywhere. Emergency red lighting activated instantly. One operator turned pale. District 7 lost completely. Communications dead. Sarah grabbed a rifle from the wall. We're out of time. Lyra stepped toward her. Deploying what? Nobody answered. Then something slammed against the command center doors. Everyone froze. Another impact followed. Metal bent inward violently. The sentries raised their weapons. Noah backed away slowly. Those aren't authority units. The doors exploded inward. A creature crawled through the smoke. It had once been human. Maybe. Its body was stretched unnaturally thin beneath torn white authority armor. Black metal protruded through its skin like growing roots. One arm ended in fused mechanical blades. His face still looked alive. That was the worst part. Its eyes moved desperately. His mouth trembled. "Help!" it whispered. Then it attacked. Gunfire erupted instantly. The creature moved impossibly fast, smashing into one of the sentries hard enough to crack concrete walls. Blood sprayed across the command center. Lyra stumbled backward. The thing turned toward her and stopped. Its ruined face twitched violently. Those dead-looking eyes widened. "Veil!" it rasped. Then every screen in the command center activated at once. Static flooded the walls. A single image appeared across all displays simultaneously. Director Kalis. Except something was wrong. His face looked pale, distorted, as though another expression moved underneath his skin. "You opened the gate," he said softly. Behind him stood dozens of motionless authority soldiers. None of them blinked. Kalis smiled slowly. "The engine remembers your bloodline." The creature in the room suddenly screamed in agony. Black metal burst further through its flesh. Sarah aimed her rifle at the screens. "What do you want?" Kalis tilted his head unnaturally far. "Return the girl." The lights dimmed again. Far below the city, the Atlas engine released a sound so deep Lyra felt it inside her bones. "Not mechanical. Hungry." Kalis' smile widened. "Or it finishes waking up." The creature wearing the remains of an authority officer collapsed onto the command center floor, twitching violently. Black metal continued growing through its skin. Its screams no longer sounded human. Lyra backed away instinctively while the operators around her stared in horror. Director Kalis remained frozen across every screen in the room, smiling, waiting. Behind him, the motionless soldiers stood shoulder to shoulder beneath flickering white lights. Their faces were pale and expressionless, as if whatever lived inside them had stepped aside for something else. Sarah Kane raised her rifle toward the screens. "You infected them." Kalis tilted his head. "No," he replied softly. "The engine remembered them." The words made no sense. Yet every person in the room looked terrified enough that Lyra knew they understood exactly what he meant. Another tremor shook the underground city. The Atlas engine roared somewhere below, a colossal metallic sound rolling through the cavern like thunder trapped beneath the earth. One of the operators shouted, "Energy spikes accelerating. Core synchronization at 37%. Sarah swore under her breath. Lyra grabbed her arm. "Tell me what's happening." Sarah looked at her finally. "Your father built a containment system around the Atlas engine." "Containment for what?" "For whatever intelligence exists inside it." Before Lyra could respond, the twitching creature on the floor suddenly sat upright. Its spine cracked backward unnaturally. The room froze. The thing's ruined eyes locked directly onto Lyra. Then it spoke in a voice layered with dozens of others. Jonas Vale broke the chain. Blood ran from its mouth as black metal continued spreading through its face. "He stole the key." Noah Saren whispered, "Don't listen to it." The creature smiled. Skin tore open around its jaw. "The daughter carries the final sequence." Sarah fired instantly. The bullet destroyed half the creature's skull. Collapsed again. Still twitching. Still alive. The screens flickered violently. Kalis' image distorted for several seconds before stabilizing again. "You cannot stop awakening," he said calmly. "The city above already belongs to us." An operator pulled up surface feeds on another monitor. Lyra felt her stomach drop. Vadran was burning. Entire districts had gone dark. Emergency vehicles crashed through flooded streets while civilians ran beneath collapsing holographic towers. Authority soldiers marched through the chaos in perfect synchronized formations. And everywhere, those creatures. Some still looked human. Others barely did. Black metal grew through bodies, buildings, vehicles. The infection spread like living machinery consuming the city from within. Lyra stared at the footage. "How is this possible?" Sarah answered quietly. The Pale Authority wasn't controlling Vadran. The realization landed like ice water. They were serving the engine. A deep alarm echoed through the command center. Multiple breaches, someone shouted. The hologram shifted suddenly. New red markers flooded the lower city map. Dozens, hundreds. The infected were entering underground. Noah stepped toward the monitors in disbelief. That's impossible. The barrier tunnels were sealed. Sarah's face hardened. Not from inside. Everybody turned toward her. Sarah looked directly at Lyra. Your father didn't just build containment systems. She hesitated. He built escape routes. Lyra felt cold all over again. What did he think was coming? Before Sarah could answer, every screen in the room changed simultaneously. Static vanished. A recording appeared. Jonas Vale. Older. Thinner. But unmistakably alive. Lyra stopped breathing. The room went silent except for distant sirens. Her father looked exhausted in the recording. Gray streaks ran through his dark hair. One side of his face was scarred badly, as if burned. If you're seeing this, Lyra, then I failed. Her knees nearly gave out. The recording continued. The Atlas engine is not a machine. Machines obey rules. This thing rewrites them. Behind Jonas, Lyra saw enormous black walls covered in moving symbols. It learns from us. It learned fear first, then war, then control. Jonas leaned closer toward the camera. The governments believed they could contain it underground. They were wrong. It doesn't escape physically. It escapes through people. Sarah lowered her rifle slowly. Jonas continued. The Pale Authority thinks they serve the engine. They don't understand it any more than we do. They only hear its promises. The recording flickered. I discovered something before they found me. The engine responds to genetic resonance. Lyra frowned. Jonas' expression broke for the first time. It responds to our family specifically. Noah looked toward Lyra slowly. The recording glitched violently. Jonas' face distorted for a split second, then stabilized again. If Kalis reaches the core chamber, the engine will fully awaken. If that happens, the lights in the recording failed suddenly. Red emergency illumination flooded Jonas' face. He looked terrified now. For the first time in Lyra's life, she saw genuine fear in her father's eyes. Listen carefully. Do not trust the city below. The recording crackled harder. Some of them already belong to it. Sarah's expression changed instantly. The operators around the room looked at one another nervously. Jonas spoke one final sentence. The engine can only open the gate through blood. The recording cut out violently. Darkness filled the screens. For several seconds, nobody moved. Then one operator slowly raised a weapon. Toward Sarah. You knew, he whispered. Sarah turned carefully. The operator's eyes were wrong. Black veins spread beneath his skin. Others in the room stepped backward from him immediately. He smiled shakily. Then 3 more operators turned their guns toward Sarah too. Noah whispered, "They're infected." Sarah aimed her rifle instantly. "Lyra, get behind me." The infected operator laughed softly. "You still don't understand," he said. His voice deepened unnaturally. "The engine isn't waking up." The lights went out again. Total darkness swallowed the command center. Then every emergency screen activated at once. A massive underground door beneath the city had opened, and something enormous was moving through it toward them. The thing moving beneath the city did not hurry. That made it worse. Across the command center screens, the opened underground gate stretched wider than a canyon. Emergency lights illuminated only fragments of what climbed upward through it. Black armored surfaces, rotating structures, limbs too large to fully comprehend. Something ancient was ascending through the foundations of the buried city. The infected operators lowered their weapons simultaneously. Not like humans deciding, like puppets receiving the same command. Sarah Kane fired first. The nearest infected operator's chest exploded backward against a console. Sparks burst across the room. Chaos erupted instantly. Gunfire flashed through darkness while civilians screamed and dove beneath workstations. Lyra grabbed Noah and pulled him behind a support pillar as bullets tore through holographic displays overhead. One infected technician smiled while bleeding out. Then black metal erupted from his spine. He kept moving. "Oh God!" Noah whispered. The transformed technician lunged at another operator, slamming mechanical blades through the man's throat before Sarah emptied half a magazine into its skull. It finally dropped twitching, but more were changing. One woman collapsed screaming as black veins spread across her face. Another snapped his own fingers backward while metallic growths burst from beneath his skin. Lyra stared in horror. They were infected this whole time? Sarah reloaded quickly. The engine plants fragments inside people. Sometimes it waits years before activating them. The command center doors exploded inward. Authority units stormed inside. Not normal soldiers anymore. Their white armor had fused directly into flesh. Visors pulsed with crimson light. Movements were unnaturally synchronized. The Hollow Army. They opened fire immediately. Sarah dragged Lyra toward a side corridor. "Move!" Noah sprinted beside them while the command center disappeared into gunfire and screams behind them. The lower city had become a war zone. Emergency sirens wailed through the cavern, while thousands of civilians fled across collapsing transit bridges. Above them, giant sections of the Atlas engine rotated slowly through the darkness like moving moons. Everywhere Lyra looked, infected people emerged from crowds. Neighbors attacking neighbors. Workers convulsing mid-run as metal erupted through bone. The city itself seemed alive now. Walls pulsed faintly. Lights flickered in synchronized patterns. And beneath everything came the constant low sound of the engine breathing. Sarah led them through narrow maintenance tunnels lit by red emergency strips. "We need to reach the core chamber before Kalis." "What happens if he gets there?" Lyra asked. Sarah didn't answer immediately. Noah did. "The engine opens." Lyra looked at him sharply. "Opens into what?" Noah swallowed hard. "Nobody knows." The tunnel shook violently. Dust rained from the ceiling. A deafening metallic roar echoed somewhere above them. Sarah touched an earpiece. "Report." Only static answered. Then a voice whispered through the interference. "They're inside the shield towers." Sarah froze. "No!" "What does that mean?" Lyra asked. Sarah looked genuinely afraid now. "It means the containment field is collapsing." The tunnel ahead suddenly flashed white. A hollow soldier dropped from the ceiling directly in front of them. It landed spider-like on all fours. Its helmet had fused into its skull completely. Red light burned from inside the visor slit. Then it spoke in Director Kalis' voice. "Bring me the girl." The creature attacked instantly. Sarah fired 3 shots into its chest while Noah shoved Lyra backward. The hollow soldier moved through bullets without slowing. Its arm unfolded into a long mechanical blade. Sarah barely blocked the strike with her rifle before the weapon split apart in sparks. The hollow slammed her into the wall hard enough to crack concrete. Lyra grabbed a fallen maintenance tool from the floor, a heavy magnetic spanner, and swung with everything she had. The tool connected with the creature's head. The visor shattered. Underneath wasn't a face anymore, only black moving metal. The hollow turned toward Lyra slowly, then smiled without lips. It lunged. Noah tackled Lyra sideways just as the blade pierced through the wall behind her head. Sarah drew a sidearm and fired directly into the exposed opening beneath the broken visor. The hollow froze. Black liquid spilled from its skull. Then it collapsed, twitching violently. Nobody moved for several seconds. Finally Noah whispered, "They keep changing faster." Sarah grabbed Lyra's arm again. "We're running out of time." They continued deeper underground. The farther they descended, the stranger the tunnels became. Old concrete slowly disappeared. Smooth black walls replaced it. Symbols moved faintly beneath surfaces like living reflections underwater. Lyra began hearing things too. Whispers. Voices just beyond hearing. Sometimes she thought one sounded like her father. Other times it sounded like herself. Noah noticed her expression immediately. "Don't listen." "I'm not trying to." "It gets worse closer to the core." The tunnel finally opened into an enormous circular chamber. Lyra stopped breathing. The core chamber stretched nearly a kilometer wide beneath the city. At its center floated a gigantic black sphere suspended above a bottomless shaft. Rings of white energy rotated around it slowly, illuminating thousands of hanging cables disappearing into darkness below. The Atlas engine's heart. And Director Kalis was already there. He stood on the central platform surrounded by dozens of hollow soldiers. White coat immaculate, hands clasped behind his back. Waiting. He smiled when he saw Lyra. You came willingly. Good. Sarah raised her weapon immediately. Step away from the core. Kalis ignored her completely. Instead he looked at Lyra almost gently. Your father misunderstood the engine. No, Lyra snapped. He tried to stop it. Kalis shook his head sadly. He tried to imprison it. The giant sphere pulsed once. The entire chamber vibrated. Kalis spread his arms toward the core. Do you know what this really is? Nobody answered. It is memory. The hollow soldiers lowered themselves simultaneously to one knee around him. Civilizations existed before ours, Kalis continued softly. Thousands of years before recorded history. They built the engine to preserve consciousness itself. The sphere pulsed again. Images suddenly flashed across its surface. Alien skies, burning oceans, cities collapsing beneath black storms. Lyra staggered backward. They uploaded themselves into it, Kalis whispered reverently. Every thought, every fear, every dream. Noah looked horrified. That's impossible. Not impossible, Kalis replied. Incomplete. The core suddenly shifted color. White energy turned crimson. Every hollow soldier in the chamber lifted their heads simultaneously. Kalis looked directly at Lyra. Your bloodline carries the final genetic sequence needed to fully activate the archive. The chamber lights died instantly. The black sphere opened, and something inside opened its eyes. The eye inside the core was enormous. Not physically. Worse, it existed everywhere at once. The moment the black sphere opened, Lyra felt something ancient look directly through her. Not at her body, not at her face, but deeper, into memory itself. The chamber disappeared. For one horrifying second, Lyra stood somewhere else entirely. A dead world beneath black stars. Towering alien cities burned across distant oceans while billions of voices screamed inside her skull simultaneously. Then reality snapped back. Lyra collapsed onto one knee gasping. Blood streamed from her nose. Around the chamber, hollow soldiers convulsed violently as crimson light poured from the opened core. Their bodies jerked like marionettes dragged by invisible strings. Director Kalis stood perfectly still beneath the red glow. Tears ran down his face. It remembers, he whispered. Sarah Kane grabbed Lyra's shoulder hard. Don't look at it. Too late. The archive had already seen her. The giant sphere pulsed again. This time everyone in the chamber heard the voice. Not through speakers. Inside their heads. Return the sequence. Noah screamed and covered his ears. Make it stop. The voice continued calmly. The bloodline is incomplete. Kalis stepped toward the core reverently. For centuries we feared it because we couldn't understand it. He turned toward Lyra slowly. But your father realized the truth too late. Lyra forced herself upright. My father tried to destroy this thing. No, Kalis replied softly. He tried to become its jailer. The core flashed violently. Images flooded the chamber walls. Human history rewritten in fragments. Ancient civilizations collapsing overnight. Entire cities abandoning technology simultaneously. Mass disappearances. Wars. The engine had been there for all of it. Watching. Learning. Influencing. Noah stared at the visions in horror. It guided civilization. Correct, Kalis said. Sarah raised her weapon again. It corrupted civilization. Kalis smiled faintly. There's no difference. The hollow army suddenly rose together around the chamber. Every soldier moved identically. Thousands of mechanical joints locking into place. The archive spoke again. The gate must open. The giant sphere unfolded wider. Lyra saw movement inside. Shapes, not machines. Faces. Millions of them layered together beneath black glass. Consciousness trapped inside the engine. Every civilization it had consumed still existed within it somehow. Still aware. Still screaming. Lyra stumbled backward. "Oh my God!" Sarah's expression hardened instantly. "That's why your father sealed it." The chamber trembled violently. Above them, massive explosions echoed through the underground city. Entire districts were collapsing now. The containment field was failing. One of the hollow soldiers suddenly stepped forward. Then another. They began walking toward Lyra in synchronized silence. Kalis did nothing to stop them. "They won't hurt you," he said softly. "The archive needs you alive." Lyra backed away. Needed for what? The answer came from the core itself. Sentient. The word hit her mind like ice water. Suddenly she saw another vision. The future. Vadran above ground, completely silent beneath black skies. Millions of people standing motionless in streets while metallic structures rose from their bodies like blooming flowers. One mind. One memory. One eternal consciousness. No more war. No more loneliness. No more death. The vision almost felt beautiful. That terrified her most. Sarah grabbed her violently, breaking the trance. "Lyra!" The vision shattered instantly. The hollow soldiers were close now. Too close. Sarah opened fire. The chamber exploded into chaos. Bullets tore through hollow bodies while the infected army advanced without fear. Noah grabbed a fallen rifle and fired wildly beside her. Lyra stood frozen. The core kept watching her, calling to her. Return the sequence. More visions pushed into her mind. Her father working alone beside the engine, crying, writing equations across black walls, realizing something terrible. Then another memory. Jonas Vale injecting himself with something while alarms screamed around him. Not memories. The archive was showing her his memories. Lyra staggered. Sarah shouted, "Move!" A hollow soldier lunged directly toward her. Instinct took over. Lyra grabbed a fallen shock baton and slammed it into the creature's exposed neck. Electricity burst through black metal. The hollow spasmed violently. Then something impossible happened. The creature stopped attacking. Its crimson visor flickered. For half a second, human eyes appeared underneath. Terrified eyes. "Help me," the soldier whispered. Then the black metal consumed his face again. Sarah destroyed him with a shotgun blast. Lyra stared in horror. "They're still alive inside those things." "Yes," Sarah snapped. "That's why you cannot hesitate." The hollow army surged forward. Dozens now. Kalis remained beside the core untouched by the battle. Watching. Almost peaceful. Noah suddenly shouted, "The cables!" Lyra looked upward. Gigantic black cables connected the core sphere to the chamber walls. Power conduits. Sarah understood instantly. If we sever the synchronization lines, the archive destabilizes. Noah finished. Kalis finally reacted. "No." For the first time, genuine fear crossed his face. The hollow army charged harder. Sarah tossed Lyra a plasma cutter from a fallen technician's kit. "Left side conduits," she shouted. Lyra ran. Gunfire erupted around her while hollow soldiers slammed into defensive barricades. The entire chamber shook violently as the Atlas engine awakened further beneath the city. The core voice thundered inside her skull now. "Do not deny ascension." Lyra reached the first conduit. It was thicker than a train tunnel. Energy pulsed through transparent sections inside like flowing stars. Behind her, hollow soldiers closed rapidly. Lyra ignited the plasma cutter. White fire screamed from the blade. Then someone grabbed her wrist. Director Kalis. He had crossed the chamber impossibly fast. Up close, Lyra finally saw the truth. Black veins moved beneath his skin too. His smile trembled painfully. "You don't understand what death feels like," he whispered. For 1 second his expression cracked completely. Lyra saw exhaustion, grief, madness. "My daughter died in the flood years ago," Kalis whispered. The archive let me hear her voice again. Lyra froze. Kalis' grip tightened. It remembers everyone. Behind him, the core opened wider, and millions of trapped voices began screaming together. The screaming inside the core was unbearable. Millions of voices layered together in endless agony. Men, women, children, entire civilizations trapped inside the archive, alive in ways no living mind was meant to survive. Lyra dropped the plasma cutter in horror. Director Kalis still gripped her wrist tightly. "You hear suffering," he whispered. "I hear eternity." His black-veined face twitched violently beneath the crimson light pouring from the core. "Death is a flaw, Lyra. The archive fixes flaws." Behind him, hollow soldiers overwhelmed the final barricades around the chamber. Sarah Kane fought like a cornered animal, shotgun flashing through smoke and sparks, while Noah struggled beside her to hold the advancing infected back. But they were losing. Fast. The Atlas engine continued waking beneath the city. The chamber walls began splitting apart slowly, revealing deeper machinery moving underneath. Colossal gears rotating after centuries of silence. The core voice thundered again. The sequence must complete. Lyra suddenly understood. Not intellectually. Instinctively. The archive didn't merely need her bloodline. It needed permission. Her family had built the final genetic lock into the engine itself. Jonas Vale hadn't only sealed the machine. He had chained it to his descendants. Kalis saw realization appear in her eyes. "Yes," he whispered. "Now you understand." The core pulsed violently. Visions exploded through Lyra's mind again. She saw her father alone inside this chamber months earlier, injecting black fluid into the engine's conduits while alarms screamed around him. Not poison. Code. A biological lock. Then she saw something else. Jonas crying. Not from fear. From guilt. "He knew," Lyra whispered aloud. Kalis nodded slowly. He discovered the truth too late. The archive spoke directly into her mind now. Jonas Vale stole immortality from humanity. Lyra staggered backward as more visions flooded through her. Worlds destroyed by war. Children starving in flooded streets. Disease. Loneliness. Grief. Death repeated endlessly across human history. Then the archive showed her another possibility. No war. No hunger. No death. Every human consciousness joined together forever. Perfect unity. Perfect memory. No one ever lost again. For one terrifying second, Lyra wanted it. Kalis saw it happen. "You feel it," he whispered. "That's why your father failed. The archive offers exactly what people need most." Lyra's chest tightened painfully, because part of her understood him. Part of her would give anything to hear her father's voice again. To undo loss. To erase death itself. The core sensed hesitation instantly. The chamber brightened blood red. "Accept ascension." Sarah's voice cut through the visions like gunfire. "Lyra!" She stood across the chamber bleeding from the shoulder, surrounded by fallen hollow soldiers. Noah screamed beside her while desperately trying to seal a ruptured conduit. The underground city shook violently again. Large sections of ceiling collapsed in the distance. Thousands were dying above them. Right now. Because the archive was waking. Lyra looked back at Kalis. "You lost your daughter." He nodded slowly. "And this thing used your grief against you." Pain crossed his face. Real human pain. For the first time, Director Kalis looked less like a monster and more like a broken man standing too close to hell. "She speaks to me every night," he whispered. The core pulsed immediately. A little girl's voice echoed softly through the chamber. "Daddy!" Kalis collapsed emotionally. Lyra felt sick. The archive wasn't preserving humanity. It was feeding on humanity, on memory, on sorrow, on the desperate human need to hold onto the dead. The realization struck her like lightning. Her father hadn't feared the engine because it was evil. He feared it because it understood people perfectly. And anything that understands humanity perfectly eventually learns how to control it. The core voice deepened. "You cannot stop evolution." Lyra slowly picked up the plasma cutter again. Kalis looked up weakly. "Please." he whispered. Don't make her disappear again. The little girl's voice echoed once more. Daddy! Tears streamed down Kayla's face. Lyra almost broke. Then she remembered something her father used to tell her when storms knocked power from their apartment. Memory matters because it ends. Not forever. Not endlessly preserved. Not trapped. Human because it fades. Beautiful because it cannot last. Lyra looked at Kayla sadly. That isn't your daughter anymore. The core screamed. The entire chamber shook violently. Hollow soldiers suddenly stopped moving. Every infected face turned toward Lyra simultaneously. The archive had heard her rejection. And it was furious. Kill the air. The hollow army charged. Sarah shouted. Now Lyra. Lyra ignited the plasma cutter and drove it directly into the nearest synchronization conduit. White fire erupted instantly. The conduit exploded. The core shrieked. Not electronically. Alive. The entire Atlas engine convulsed beneath the city. Hollow soldiers collapsed mid-charge as black metal burst uncontrollably through their bodies. Kayla screamed and grabbed his head. No! Lyra ran for the second conduit. The chamber was collapsing now. Entire support pillars cracked apart while burning debris crashed into the abyss below. Noah fired desperately at approaching hollow soldiers while Sarah covered Lyra's path. The second conduit exploded under the plasma cutter. The core sphere split wider. Inside it, Lyra saw impossible things. Cities, faces, civilizations stacked endlessly within living darkness. The trapped consciousnesses were trying to escape. The archive voice fractured into millions. Do not abandon us. Lyra reached the final conduit. Kayla staggered toward her through smoke and collapsing metal. Please. He no longer sounded powerful. Only broken. The little girl's voice echoed one last time. Daddy. I'm scared. Kayla stopped moving. For one final second, clarity returned to his eyes. He looked at the core, then at Lyra, and finally understood. Horror crossed his face. Oh God! He whispered. The archive instantly turned on him. Black metal erupted through his chest. Kayla screamed as mechanical growth consumed his body from within. Lyra looked away and severed the final conduit. The chamber went white. The Atlas engine screamed like a dying god. White light consumed everything. Lyra felt herself falling through memory. Not her own. Everyone's. Millions of lives flashed through her mind in fragments too fast to understand fully. Alien skies, ancient wars, children laughing beside oceans that no longer existed, entire civilizations rising and dying in seconds. The archive was breaking apart, and all the souls trapped inside it were screaming their way free. Lyra hit the ground hard. Silence followed. Real silence this time. No whispers. No voice inside her skull. Only distant collapsing metal. She forced her eyes open slowly. The core chamber was dying around her. The gigantic black sphere had cracked completely open above the abyss, leaking streams of white energy upward like escaping stars. Massive pieces of the Atlas engine tore themselves apart beneath the city, collapsing into darkness far below. The hollow soldiers were motionless now. Some lay dead. Others simply stood frozen where they had stopped, black metal crumbling slowly off their bodies like ash. The connection was gone. The archive was dead. Or dying. Sarah Kane crawled from beneath fallen debris, coughing blood into her sleeve. Noah Sarin sat nearby, staring blankly at his own shaking hands as emergency lights flickered weakly around them. Lyra pushed herself upright painfully. Kalis! Noah looked toward the center platform. Director Kalis knelt there alone. Or what remained of him. The black metal consuming his body had stopped spreading. Cracks ran across his pale skin like cooling glass. He looked smaller somehow without the archive speaking through him. Human again. Barely. He stared upward at the collapsing core with tears in his eyes. She's gone, he whispered. Nobody answered. The chamber trembled violently. Sarah forced herself standing. We have minutes before the lower city collapses. Lyra looked around at the dying machinery. What about everyone still underground? Evacuation routes are opening, Noah said weakly. The shield systems are failing. Surface tunnels too. Another explosion shook the cavern. Huge sections of the ceiling split apart above them. For the first time in centuries, sunlight broke through. A thin golden beam pierced the underground darkness and touched the ruined core chamber floor. Everybody stopped moving. The lower city had never seen the sun. More cracks spread overhead rapidly. Sunlight poured downward in widening columns through the collapsing layers of Vadran above. Dust glittered through the beams like falling stars. People across distant bridges began staring upward. Some cried instantly. Others simply stood frozen. An entire hidden civilization seeing daylight for the first time. Kalis looked at the sunlight touching his hands. Then he laughed softly. A broken sound. "She would have liked this," he whispered. The chamber shook harder. Sarah moved toward the exit tunnel immediately. "Lyra." Lyra hesitated. Kalis noticed. "You should go." She stepped toward him carefully. "You knew it wasn't really your daughter." Kalis closed his eyes. "I knew," he admitted quietly. "But grief makes cowards out of intelligent men." The collapsing core crackled violently behind him. "Why did the archive need my family?" Kalis looked toward the dying machine. "Because your ancestors built the first lock." Lyra frowned. "Not Jonas," Kalis whispered. "Long before him." He coughed painfully, black fluid staining his white coat. The first civilization realized what the archive would become. Some of them chose to seal it instead of joining it. He looked up at her weakly. "Your bloodline carried that decision forward." Another collapse thundered through the chamber. The abyss beneath the core began swallowing entire sections of machinery. Kalis smiled faintly. Humanity survives because somebody finally remembered death matters. Then the floor beneath him cracked apart. Lyra lunged forward instinctively. Too late. Kalis fell backward into the abyss silently as the collapsing core swallowed him into white light. Gone. The chamber started coming apart completely. Sarah grabbed Lyra and dragged her toward the evacuation tunnels. Noah sprinted beside them while behind them the Atlas engine screamed one final time. A deafening metallic sound rolling upward through the city like the death cry of a buried god. Then it stopped forever. The underground city erupted into chaos. Thousands of civilians flooded the transit bridges carrying children, supplies, wounded survivors. Emergency systems failed one after another while huge sections of ancient infrastructure collapsed behind them. But above, the surface was open. For the first time in generations, hidden people emerged into Vadran openly beneath the morning sky. The city above had changed too. Without the archive controlling them, surviving hollow soldiers collapsed motionless in flooded streets. The pale authority fractured instantly. Citizens tore down white banners while emergency broadcasts filled every district with evacuation orders and truths long buried. By sunset, the secret was no longer secret. The lower city existed. The authority had served something beneath Vadran, and Jonas Vale had died stopping it. 3 days later, Lyra stood on the roof of Ether Terminal watching sunlight spread across the city. The shattered dome above Platform 9 remained unrepaired. Nobody wanted it repaired anymore. People needed to see the sky. Construction drones moved through distant districts while rescue teams pulled survivors from collapsed underground sectors. Thousands were dead, but millions were alive. Noah joined her quietly carrying 2 cups of terrible station coffee. "You hate this stuff," Lyra said. "I know," he replied. "Feels important somehow." She smiled faintly for the first time in days. Below them, crowds gathered around giant public screens, replaying recovered footage from the lower city. Not propaganda anymore. Truth. Messy. Painful. Human truth. Noah leaned against the railing beside her. "What happens now?" Lyra looked toward the horizon where sunlight touched both the upper towers and the broken entrances leading underground. "No idea." "That terrifying?" "Completely." Below them, children from the lower city ran through station crowds laughing at rain falling through the shattered roof. Free. No hidden world beneath another. No buried memory machine whispering promises into frightened minds. Just people. Imperfect. Temporary. Alive. Lyra reached into her jacket pocket and pulled out the black teardrop key. The metal had gone cold. Ordinary now. She stared at it for a long moment before throwing it into the river flooding beneath the city rails. Noah watched it disappear. Your father would have approved. Lyra looked upward at the open sky. Far above the clouds, evening sunlight broke across Vadran in gold and crimson fire. For the first time in centuries, nothing hidden watched humanity from below. And somewhere inside the silence that followed, Lyra finally heard her father's voice exactly as she remembered it. Not trapped, not artificial, just memory. And memory, she realized, was enough.